Hi, Christopher Emmett. As a yogi, I feel like I'm supposed to be should be politically indifferent. Um, and this last electoral season, 2016, was kind of overwhelming with the heat of the political discussion. And one thing that's particularly frustrating about it for me is that I am nonpartisan. And the majority of the conversations that you hear, as influenced by mainstream media news outlets, is a red versus blue debate. Republican Party versus the Democrat Party. And what I like to point out, one of the messages that you don't get to hear so much, is that the main message is a misconception, a real false dichotomy that politics in America is supposedly all about conservatism, which is represented by the Republican Party, versus liberalism, which is represented by the Democrat Party. So, on one hand, it's a false dichotomy. It doesn't really exist of conservatism versus liberalism. Those terms are very relative. There are ways in which the Conservative Party can be seen, the Republican Party can be seen as liberal, and there are ways in which the Democrat Party can be seen as conservative. My vote went for a third party, and I identify as a libertarian at times because liberty and libertarianism is a message that I choose to represent, something that is underspoken for too much. It's a principle that our country was originally founded upon, and there are other people out there, other voices that do point out ways in which our government, which was originally established to protect our liberties, to protect us from oppression from other forces, has transformed into a controlling force. And both the Republican and the Democrat Party have their own agendas on how to control us. They are regimes. But any message that is counter to their agendas gets suppressed pretty easily. Not completely. We still have a lot of freedom of speech. It just doesn't get proliferated and overwhelming the airways like the red versus blue message does. I am not a fundamental libertarianist. And what I mean by that is when you go to an extreme end of libertarianism, you have anarchy. And there are ways in which I definitely feel anarchical. And that word has a bad connotation to it. And it doesn't necessarily have to. Anarchy means, without central government control. I like to promote libertarianism and anarchism in a sense that the emphasis should be on responsibility of individual citizens, responsibility of neighbors to be good neighbors, to keep other people in their community in check, to be both servants and police as a citizen to your own neighborhood, to your own community. And because I see that as government grows more and more, and we also see this in typical political discussions and debates and the questions that the public has for the politicians is, we have this issue. What are you going to do about it for us? the Libertarian Party gets stifled easily from these conversations because they have a very different approach. They say, well, why should we be doing something for it? Our solution is to pull away from it, to not muddy things more with bureaucracy. The people need to speak up for themselves amongst each other and resolve things themselves. I like to think of the concept of natural social consequences that I believe should be allowed to unfold, but the political and I would say corporate agenda of the federal politics allows larger forces to have their way, sustaining a hierarchy, sustaining stratification of resources and wealth. And although the Democrat Party preaches a message of equality, sometimes they give off this illusion of such. They preach messages of taking action for meeting people's basic needs, which I think is a great idea. But the public hears this and they end up getting hope that that some sort of fairness is going to unfold through big government. Whereas in reality, as I just said, big government pretty much just maintains hierarchy and stratification, which is not equality, which is the buzzword that Democrat followers like to use. So going back to the fundamental idea of libertarianism, to return to the idea of less government for the sake of empowering individuals to determine their own destiny and to be involved in their own community. I do also see the other side of the discussion, and this should be the real, do we call it a dichotomy? Because once again, it's a spectrum, and it's the debate that should happen between the two concepts of liberty. Do the individuals have their own autonomy, their own ability to create and manifest their own reality and their own future, their own path, by their own volition, versus progressivism? That, I think, should be the real debate, because we see them counteract each other, because big government has abilities to promote progressive ideas. When we pull resources together from multiple communities, from multiple states, bigger things can happen. More developed systems, infrastructures. The idea I like to think about is, I've seen the idea proposed, don't know how scientifically and practically sound it is in regards to engineering and whatnot, but a plot of land in like Nevada or New Mexico that's a desert could potentially be loaded with solar panels, solar arrays to power the whole country. Fantastic idea. I like the idea of renewable resources, and this is a solution that would require essentially the whole country to pull its resources together and work together in order to have a more progressive, sustainable society that can relish and truly enjoy the fruits of science and technology without the consumption, without the conquest and destruction of the earth and the progress. I like the idea. It is, but it cannot be manifested realistically, cannot be implemented until the right conversation happens. The conversation that needs to happen is not conservatism versus liberalism. It is liberty versus progressivism. That's not the conversation. That's not the debate that I hear yet. And that's where I want to go with political discussion in America. And we have to be willing to abandon the simplicity of the red versus blue battle. We have to abandon the fanaticism and that duality.